Everyone. This is Nithya Ramachandra from the NR Sports Show. This is episode 846, joined by a really special guest. His name is Jeff Frye. He's a former MLB second baseman. He played for the Texas Rangers, Boston Red Sox, Colorado Rockies, Toronto Blue Jays, and now he does a lot of things off the field, covering the game of baseball. And he has a page called The Hitting Guru. So he obviously the hitter, and he coaches. He coaches in hitting now too. But first of all, Jeff, I just want to say thank you for joining the show. And how are you and your family doing today?
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, we're doing well. I just got home yesterday from Ohio. I went and spoke at the opening ceremonies of a tournament in Ohio for 17 tournaments. So I've been traveling a little bit here and there.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so I want to start off with your journey and career first, and while you were growing up as a child, and obviously you're from Oakland, California. When did you get interested in playing sports? And obviously you play baseball, but did you get to play any other sports before baseball? And do you have like a role model growing up?
Yeah, well, I started playing sports when I was little. You know, my uncle Peter was kind of the athlete in the family, and he taught me all sports. And we did pitch, hit, and run competitions. We did punt, pass, and kick competitions, superstars competitions. So it was basically any sport that was available to kids my age. He was getting me in and helping me practice to prepare for the event. So I've been doing it a long time.
Yeah. So who is that one player that you looked up to in the majors while you were working on your craft?
Well, at first it was Willie Mays, and it was basically because that was my uncle's favorite player, one of his favorite players, and he played for the San Francisco Giants. And I lived out in the Bay Area, so he was the big hero. And then when I got a little bit older and Willie retired, it became Jack Clark.
Yeah.
Who was a big power hitting right fielder for the Giants. And so he was basically my hero growing up.
Wow. Yeah. So take me back to your process and what decided for you to play baseball, and what was the deciding factor for you to play baseball?
That I wasn't tall enough to play basketball. I mean, I actually was going to college, junior college, on a basketball scholarship at 5'5", 135 pounds. And that summer playing American Legion baseball, I had 15 hits in a row over 2 days. Oh, wow. And the local junior college coach asked me if I wanted to come to his school instead and play basketball and baseball. So I decided to do that, and I made it all the way up to the first scrimmage in basketball. And I got in for about 45 seconds, and my one shot almost broke the backboard, and I was really nervous. And I decided that, I was going to focus solely on baseball and really started just working at that.
So what were the main things that you learned as a baseball player? I mean, in high school and college as a baseball player? Obviously now you can see, for example, Shohei Ohtani is a two-way player, which is amazing to see. But for you, did you get to play any other positions before playing second baseman?
Yeah, in high school, I played a lot of shortstop. And summer ball, I played a lot of shortstop. And I think once I got to college, I realized that I didn't have the arm strength to play shortstop at higher level. I really had a below average arm, but I was always a pretty good hitter and pretty fast. And so, it was just meant to be that second base was my position, because generally second baseman, you don't have to have a really strong arm, just, good hands.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, obviously take me back to your draft process, and what was that like? Obviously, you got drafted by the Texas Rangers, and what was that like? Obviously, the draft was different from now. So what was it like once you got your name called by Texas Rangers and hanging out with your family?
Yeah, it was different. I mean, it wasn't like that at all. I was actually, we didn't have computers and we didn't have cell phones, and the draft wasn't televised. So I was basically sitting in my apartment in Durant, Oklahoma. And we didn't even have a phone in our apartment. So the only way that I found out that I got drafted was my college coach, Mike Matheny, and his wife drove over to our apartment complex and knocked on my door and told me that I'd just been drafted in the 30th round by the Texas Rangers.
Wow. I'm just curious though, because since you're from Oakland, California, did Oakland have interest in you?
No, I mean, I don't think so. Not many teams did, because I just finished my senior year in college.
Right.
And I didn't have really any scouts talking to me. And one of my teammates was invited to a Texas Rangers tryout camp that he decided he didn't want to go to. So I went in his place.
Right.
And I had a great day and hit 3 home runs and really, put on a show. And then they invited me to another tryout camp. And that's how I ended up getting drafted.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So obviously after you got drafted, what was the first thing you did with your family?
Nothing, man. We were all spread out. I was, my mom was in California. My aunt and uncle and cousins all lived 3 hours away in Oklahoma. So it was, basically just prepare and get ready to leave in a week or so and head out to my first short season in Butte, Montana. There wasn't much time celebrating with the family.
Yeah. So obviously you had to spend time in the minors first. And for you as a player, what were the main things that you learned as a minor league player, and now where you got to the majors? But what was the main thing that you learned as a minor league player?
That it was work. It wasn't just, it was a full-time job.
Yeah.
And that the players that were there were really good. And a lot of them were better than I was. And I hadn't really experienced much of that in my life. I played summer ball in the Jayhawk League with a lot of good players, but I mean, this was the best group of players I'd ever been with and on a team with. And I realized that I really better work hard to get better, or I'm not going to be around for very long.
Yeah. Well, so now I want to ask you about your call up. What was that like once you got the call up from the Rangers? And obviously when you get called up and you going into this locker room and you see players like Nolan Ryan, one of the best pitchers in my opinion to play the game, and you have Julio Franco, Pudge Rodriguez, Jose Canseco, Juan Gonzalez, and you go down the list, the talented Rangers roster when you got called up.
Yeah, it was a surreal experience, and it was, I got to meet a lot of those players in spring training because I got to go to Major League camp that year, and man, it was cool. It was just like all of a sudden I get a phone call from my manager in AAA, and I'm going to the big leagues, and I got to jump on a plane and get to Arlington as quick as I can. And I show up, and I'm leading off, playing second the first game, and Nolan Ryan's pitching for us that night.
Wow. So yeah, take me back to that. Take me back to your debut. What was that like? How nervous were you going in, and obviously getting to play behind Nolan Ryan on your debut? What was that like?
Well, I was lucky that I wasn't there or didn't know about it. Like I didn't have much time in advance to prepare because it was just like I didn't have much time to get nervous. But rolling into Arlington and they said, "Hey, go look at the lineup," and you're leading off playing second, and Nolan Ryan's pitching. I'm like, man, this is like, I don't even get to settle in. It's like right into the fire, and I was nervous. My first at bat, I was shaking in my boots, and I walked on 4 pitches, thankfully. And then I started to relax and just realized that it was just another baseball game.
Yeah. I want to ask you, I'm just curious. I want to ask you about being a leadoff hitter, because some people think it could be an easy job, but it could be hard too. Obviously leading off with the other batters. And for you, how hard could it be to be a leadoff hitter just to set the table for your teammates?
Yeah, it's tough, especially when you're going into a game facing somebody you've never even seen before.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have any time to prepare for the guy I was really facing, and I just kind of talked to the hitting coach about, the stuff this guy has. And back in those days, the leadoff hitter's job was really to see a lot of pitches and get on base. You didn't have many guys back in those days that were hitting leadoff home runs to start games and things like that. It was, I had to work the count, basically allow my teammates hitting behind me to see what this guy has. And so that was the role I had.
So did you ever think in your career that you could have stayed with the Texas Rangers throughout your career? And obviously, sports is a business. A lot of players move around. But for you, did you ever think in your mind that you could have stayed with one team?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of rare these days, to have a guy stay with one team. And there's so much player movement and turnover, and in the 3 years I was with the Rangers, I had 3 different managers. Yeah. So it was, wow. If one manager doesn't particularly like your style of play or whatever, he's going to bring in a guy that he wants because it's his job on the line. And so, that's just something you get used to. I mean, it would have been nice, it's always nice to play for the team that drafted you your whole career, but it just doesn't happen very often.
Yeah. So before we get to your Boston career, I just have to ask you this because you play with Jose again in Boston. Was this a package deal or something?
Yeah, no doubt. No, I actually got to spend some time with Jose this past weekend. We were at an autograph show together and played in a Texas Hold'em poker tournament.
Wow.
And so I haven't seen him probably for 20 years. And he was one of my favorite teammates. He was a funny guy. He's still the same guy. And I think he was unfairly treated by a lot of people in baseball.
Yeah. So what was it like though? Was he there before you came to Boston, or did he came at the same time that you went to Boston from Texas?
I think he was. I don't remember that exactly, but I know when I was with Texas in '92, I think he got traded to Texas during the season. So I was there first, and then we went to Boston around the same. He might have been there a little bit before me. And then when I went over there, it was fun. It's always nice when you have a familiar face, in the locker room.
Yeah. Speaking of Boston, you guys had a heavyweight roster. Also, like Texas, you had Tim Wakefield, Roger Clemens, Mo Vaughn, Jamie Moyer. You go on, and Nomar Garcia Parra, one of the best out there too. What was that like going from a talented, a great roster to another great roster?
Well, it was great. I mean, Mo Vaughn just told me to get on base, and he'd knock me in, and he was right, and so that was, same thing in Boston as in Texas. My role was to kind of be a table setter guy at the top of the lineup and get on base and play good, solid defense and just, kind of play the game and move runners and things like that.
So what was it like playing in the AL East, competing in a high level against my Yankees? Obviously, you had the Orioles, and you played for the Blue Jays too. And obviously, what was it like just to play in the tough division like that?
No, I loved it. I mean, I believe from back then to today, it's still the toughest division to play in, especially with those Yankees teams they had in the 90s and in early 2000. And, that's the ultimate competition, playing, in my opinion, the game's best rivalry head to head. And we had some good teams and some great matchups. And I tell people all the time, I said, because I played for 4 teams, I said, but nothing was like Boston. I said, when you walk out of the tunnel into the dugout and onto the field before the game, there's a buzz in the stadium that is unlike any other experience I've ever had in baseball.
Yeah. And now you go to a whole complete different situation, in the National League playing for Colorado in the high altitude. And what was that like? And obviously some players, it takes a long time for them to adjust. And obviously the All-Star break is there right now in Colorado. And what was it like playing for the Rockies? You play with Juan Pierre, Scott Service, Todd Helton, Lai Walker too.
Yeah, I mean, I had a good time in Colorado. I was only there for 2 months. But it takes a little time to get used to the elevation. It wasn't really that bad. You just really notice it when you're maybe running to get loose before the game, that it's kind of hard to catch your breath.
Yeah.
And the ball actually travels a little bit different. It just kind of, you have to adjust to that. But I mean, I enjoyed hitting there not because the ball carried, but because the outfield was so big, and it just looks like no way these 3 outfielders can cover this entire outfield.
Yeah. So I know you were there for 2 months, but what was it like playing with the first baseman like Todd Helton, because you played second base, and it must have been easy for you because when you sometimes when second baseman throw the ball, it can go anywhere, but Todd Helton was able to catch it wherever it went.
Yeah, he's probably the best defensive first baseman I ever played with, and he worked at it. I mean, it wasn't just, I mean, a lot of it was probably natural ability, but he worked at it every day. And particularly on the play where somebody would hit a ball to the right side, like to the first baseman, and you see the first baseman underhand it to the pitcher. Well, that play gets messed up all the time. But Todd Helton did that play a lot different than anybody else I ever played with. He would catch the ball and sprint as fast as he could, so he didn't have to toss the ball to the pitcher, and it just eliminated the possibility of the pitcher dropping the ball or maybe not getting over in time.
Wow. And then now you ended your career in Toronto, back in the AL East, and you got to play with great players there too. And for example, Carlos Delgado. Actually, we had Shannon Stewart on the show last week, and he played for Toronto too. And what was it like just to play in that city? Because it's an amazing city there in Canada, and their team is on the rise with young, great talent. But for you, what was that like? And you played with the late Doc Holliday, and what was that like?
It was great. I mean, when I got there, Chris Carpenter and Holliday were like in their first year or rookie players, and then, Carlos Delgado was the ultimate professional, great player. Raul Mondesi was a little bit later in his career, but he still was very talented. They had Jose Cruz Jr. And I got to play with Tony Fernandez, and he's just, for ass act, and a great city in Toronto. So it was a good experience for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of Raul Mondesi, his son played for the Royals, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So speaking of what was it? What do you think of his son as a player? Because he's growing into a star right now.
Yeah, well, I think when he first came up, everybody had him penciled in as a future superstar, and I'm not sure he's gotten to that level yet. But if you play shortstop in the major leagues as a starting player, you're one of 30 in the world. So he's obviously a talented guy.
Yeah. So for you now, looking back at your career, obviously you play with great teams, great teammates, great coaching staff, and you had over a 290 batting average, over 16 home runs, and over 100 runs batted in. So looking back at your career, how grateful are you to play the game that you loved and compete at a high level and just to get to your goal?
I'm very thankful. I was very fortunate just to have the opportunity in the first place. And I think I probably did better than most people had expected when they drafted me in the 30th round. So, I'm proud of my accomplishments in the game and thankful of all the incredible players I was able to be teammates with.
See, that's the type of story that we like on our show. You have the never give up mentality right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because my whole life I was basically told I was too small to play at a lot of levels. Even I got cut from the basketball team in 9th grade, and 3 years later I went to college on a basketball scholarship. So it was, I think those things just motivated me to prove people wrong.
For me, height doesn't matter, because you look at Jose Altuve. His to be honest, the height doesn't matter. It's all about working hard and how you get there. So
yeah, and your heart. They can't measure your heart. And a lot of the smaller guys are gritty players and have big hearts, and they're used to being told their whole lives that they're too small.
Yeah,
and most of us just use it as motivation.
Yeah. So for you now, what's it like to be still involved in the game, but as a coach, teaching other players how to hit the ball better? And obviously you're called on Instagram, you're called the hitting guru. And how did that come about? It's called the Shigon, right? Shigon Sports.
Yeah, the Shigon Nation. Yeah, I just declared myself the hitting guru one day. I think that's what you can do on social media. Just declare yourself something, and it's, that's the way it is. But I made a silly video just over a year ago and posted on social media, and it was a big hit, and I haven't stopped since. And now I've been asked to travel all over the country for speaking engagements and things. And I think we just need to get back to teaching kids the basic fundamentals, and because this game is hard, and only the elite players in the world get to play in the major league. So I think we should just make it fun for kids so they have a good experience.
So what advice, speaking of these kids, and obviously the draft is happening right now, it happened this week, and what advice would you give to these young players, the ones that just got drafted, and what advice would you give to other athletes too?
Well, for the guys who just got drafted, this is exciting time. It's just the first part of the journey. They really haven't accomplished anything yet at the professional level, and it just gets harder. Now you got to work to make it to the major leagues, and if you're lucky enough to make it to the major leagues, you got to work even harder to stay there. And, if you want to be good at this game, I tell kids all the time, you got to work at it. You got to practice. You got to put in the time. And if it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Hmm. So now we do this fun little segment on the show. It's called the Rapid Fire segment. You ready for this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so obviously there's a picture of you. Obviously you played against Derek Jeter, and there's a picture of you when Derek Jeter slid into second. You had the ball, and what was that experience like playing against Derek Jeter?
It was great. I mean, the guy was an incredible player and even a better person. You never heard anything negative about Derek Jeter. And I mean, especially being a I'm Yankee, and I'm a Red Sox. I mean, those guys were our enemies.
Yeah.
So it was. I liked Derek Jeter as a player and a person, but I didn't like him when it was game time. He was the enemy.
Yeah. Speaking of your former team, the Red Sox, are you surprised that they're playing at a high level right now?
I am a little surprised. I mean, I didn't think after last year that they would do what they're doing right now, but I think they're just bringing Cora back was a big move for them. Obviously, the players respect him and like playing for him. So, and I think they're overachieving right now, but hopefully they can hang on.
So, what was your most memorable game that you played in your career?
Probably I had a game in I think 1997 when I hit a walk-off home run in Fenway Park.
Oh, wow.
That was that was against the Minnesota Twins. Back-to-back home runs. Darren Lewis and I went back-to-back in the night. Two guys that aren't home run hitters. I do also remember just a CNI single I hit to right field against John Wetland.
Oh, wow.
In Fenway for a game-winning hit in the ninth inning too, a walk-off hit. So those are a couple of them.
Wow, that's a rarity off of him.
Yeah, he was tough. I mean, he was the closer before Mariano. Mariano was the setup man back then.
Yeah, we had actually Jeff Nelson was on the show last month, and he was part of that team, and it was an honor talking to him. So for you, what would you say that Pudge Rodriguez and Nolan Ryan was the best battery mate you ever seen?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to complain. I mean, Pedro and Jason Varitek were pretty good too, but I mean, Nolan Ryan is one of the greatest pitchers to ever play, and Pudge arguably is the best catcher to ever play. So you're probably right with that one.
Yeah. So for you, were you the type of player that pays attention? So when you guys were playing, obviously, when the All-Star break happened, were you the type of player that you love to watch All-Star break, or not really?
Oh yeah, I love the home run derby. Watched that last night, and then the All-Star game, and I think it was a little bit different. I didn't like when Bud Selig said the winner of the All-Star game got home field advantage, and I'm glad they don't do that anymore. But I mean, it's always nice to see the best players in the game competing, and hopefully it's like it used to be where these guys take it serious and are actually trying to win the game.
Yeah. And also speaking of the home run derby last night, man, Trey Mancini, even though he lost, but he overcame a lot with cancer. This guy had a great show yesterday. But what are your thoughts on Pete Alonso, man? This guy is back-to-back champs.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I mean, it looked like he could hit it out every single swing.
Yeah.
And Mancini put on a great show. I was really happy for him after all the stuff that he's been through and persevered. And I mean, he might have been out of the game completely. And it's just a great story. I mean, I was actually rooting for him just because of his great story. But I just think he was up against Pete, and Pete wasn't going to be denied last night.
Yeah. So obviously you play for the Red Sox and Rangers. I want to get to two former second basemen, Ian Kinsler and Dustin Pedroia. Thoughts on their careers?
Man, both great players. I used to represent Ian.
Oh, wow.
Back when he was the first part of his career. So did his first multi-year contract. And I always thought Ian was better than Pedroia. Mm-hmm. And there were a few years there where in my mind, he definitely was better. But Pedroia probably over the long haul had better numbers. And I know Pedroia was a smaller guy. Ian wasn't a very big guy either. But both those guys were just grinders and just baseball players.
Yeah. So I want to get to this Shohei Ohtani kid, man. This guy's amazing. They're comparing him to Babe Ruth already, which is kind of crazy. But he's a two-way player. Obviously, yesterday he hit it in the Derby. Now he's going to pitch tonight. How effective do you think coming off from yesterday will he be tonight?
Well, he'll probably throw one inning. He obviously was tired
Yeah.
after the first round, and yeah, I'm not a big fan of the new format. Players just aren't used to hitting for 3 minutes in a row. I kind of like the old format when they had the 10 outs. But I mean, what an incredible talent. It's you just don't see that very often in the game. And, I don't think it's fair to compare anybody to Babe Ruth.
No.
And plus Babe Ruth played 100 years ago almost. So the competition was different, but Shohei is definitely worth, every time he hits or pitches, I'm trying to watch.
Yeah. What was your most favorite city to play in?
I would say Boston.
Boston.
Yeah. I mean, there were other cities I really liked, but ballparks particularly I liked. I liked playing in Camden Yards. I liked playing in Kansas City, and I liked playing in Cleveland. I loved hitting in Jacobs Field. So, it was just a lot of good. That was really when they started redoing all the ballparks back during my career.
Toughest pitcher that you had to face?
Probably Randy Johnson, even though I did pretty good against him. He was the most intimidating guy, without a doubt. But Mike Mussina from your Yankees and Orioles, man, I just had a hard time against him. He had a fastball that he pitched up in the zone. It had a lot of life and this nasty knuckle curve. And I think I was probably 1 for 24 or 25 in my career against him. So that's not very good.
What are your thoughts? Speaking of the Yankees, what are your thoughts on our team this year? Obviously, we're struggling. We're 3 games over 500, but hopefully with this break, hopefully they can pick it up again. Do you think they can make the playoffs or make up ground here, or is it too late?
You're not going to like my answer.
Oh.
I don't know. It just doesn't seem like they've ever got into a good flow this year. And, they've got a lineup stacked with power hitters who strike out a lot, and they don't really produce. They don't really do the small ball things to make things happen. So I think they might have to change the roster structure up a little bit to try and make a run in the second half.
So if the right opportunity presents for yourself, would you consider being a manager at some point down the line?
Oh, of course. I mean, I'd love, everybody would probably love, a former player would love to be a manager in the major leagues, but, it's different. It's a lot different now. I don't think that managers have quite the say that they used to have. So it would have to be a situation where, I get to make my own lineup. I don't get told who to play and when to take pitchers out of the game. And I think that's, having the veteran managers like a Tony La Russa,
yeah,
that's been around the block over guys that are just first year, second guys, has made a huge difference in the game. And I wish they got back to having more old school baseball managed games.
And you can see it now. The White Sox are having big success with him as a manager in first place there. And would you consider? Obviously, I'm not hating on Boone, but would you consider the Yankees?
Heck yeah, man. The Yankees. I mean, the most storied franchise in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to manage that team? I know it's not easy because you're getting scrutinized every night on the moves you make if you lose a game. And it's tough being a manager, I think, because, if everything's going wrong, it's the manager's fault. If everything's going right, the players get the credit. So right. It's just a tough position.
So do you guys have any events coming up there in Texas or anywhere else? Do you have anything planned for your for the things you do now?
Well, I'm supposed to have a hitting camp this weekend. Not sure about that yet, but there's a lot of things coming down the road from the Qigong movement that a lot of it just pops up, and I get asked, hey, you want to fly into this town and talk to our kids and parents and things like that. So, I mean, I have a few things. I've been on the road probably for 3 weeks out of the last month traveling. So I'm not sure what's coming up exactly, but I know there's more things coming up from Qigong Nation.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so the last 2 things here before I let you go, our team is part of this foundation called the Hugh Jackson Foundation. He's a former NFL coach. He's now the He's the offensive coordinator at Tennessee State with Eddie George, and we're trying to help him prevent human trafficking, making sure the community stays safe, and the kids stay safe. So I'll send you the foundation so you can go check it out.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah. And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and essential workers right now?
Yeah, just thank you. I mean, and I know where you live, you guys had it a lot worse than what we had it here in Texas. And I talked to a lot of people that live in that part of the country. And I mean, I don't think those people ever get the credit they deserve, and they're kind of behind the scenes and just expected to do their job and put their lives on the line. So I would just like to say thank you.
Yeah, well said. And one more thing. Do you see Joey Gallo getting traded at the trade deadline, or he stays?
I think he's going to get traded. I mean, just because we know who his agent is, and I'd hate to see the Rangers hang on to him in a season where we obviously have no chance,
right,
and just let him walk for nothing when we can potentially, especially as hot as he's been in the last month, get a good haul of prospects or whatever for him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But there it is. That wraps up episode 846 with former MLB second baseman Jeff Frye. Go follow him on all social media formats. And now he's a coach. He helps out other kids to get better at their game. And go follow him on Shigon Nation. Man, you're doing a great job with that. Keep up the awesome work. And thank you again for coming on the show. We would like to have you back as a returning guest so you can meet the full team at some point. But keep it up, and you and your family stay safe.
All right. I appreciate it. Same to you, buddy.
Thank you.